Yeah, good morning. Well, it's it's about 6:30 in the morning on my final day here in Martigny. So just a few reflections about what I'm about my experience here. I think overall it's been very very interesting for me to be involved in this program. Um, I've learned a lot really. Um, and I think the important thing here that I learned is, firstly, um, I've built up confidence. Okay, that's a personal thing, but I've built up confidence in my product, what I want to develop, and what I want to design. Secondly, um, my thinking was validated by one of the researchers there. Um, and they probably are the only person that could see the big picture. They could make the relationship between the sales effort, because honestly, building a pitch, it's about telling the story and convincing people to buy your product at the end. Um, but they understood the difference between my method, my model, the technology development, and everything else. They see how I want to use AI in a very dynamic way, in a very lean way. And I can do this because I have years of experience in implementing systems and projects and automation. 20 years in the pharmaceutical business teaches you a lot about how to automate. And I think that really kind of leads me to the first piece of feedback, which is we live in a dynamic world. Our world moves, we move as people. And things that we do are automated. We do not spend hours and hours and hours analyzing big data. Now, do I mention this? Because I've had some fairly intense discussions with people who are on the data management side, and I'm not going to call them data scientists because their arguments were very narcissistic, very egotistical, and they spent most of their time trying to prove that I was wrong or I am wrong and that I'm not intelligent enough to do this. Now I'm giving you that feedback because, yeah, it's it's demonstrating the closed-mindedness of the data people. So my system is built on AI. The AI is a machine learning, and I have not had the opportunity to present what I'm doing from a technology perspective. Now, that's the second piece of feedback for you. I'm an IT guy. Okay, I don't pretend to be, a doctor or a professor or anything like that. I have 35 years of real hardcore practical experience, and my system is about connecting people and connecting data, but to be able to do it in a dynamic and proactive way, and to use automation. And frankly, the volume of data, the different data entry points mean that you and me as human beings, we are not capable of being able to route so much data because there are so many different types of device and different machines and so on. We don't have the speed of hand. Our human reflexes are not fast enough to be able to manage this level of automation that I'm processing. There is a lot of work to do, I agree, and there is a huge data analytics step because, ultimately when we get to the virtual twin, it needs some smart processing in there, and I've accounted for that as part of my overall plan. So the next point that I want to get to is is how I find some of the feedback and doing the pitches. I think the main takeaway was, Graham, this project is too big and it's too complicated. Okay, so what was not being accounted for is the 35 years of experience that I've had. I mean, I've worked on projects of 70 million individual projects of that size. I worked on a program that was the last time I saw a budget for that, it was 120 million. These are projects and programs that spend more than most businesses in Switzerland make in a year. Okay, so when I present a project, for 5-10 million, it's a small project for me personally. I know exactly what I'm doing, and I'll tell you why. Some of my work in the past has been remediation work. This means that I had to go back, or I was part of a project team that had to go back to fix failures. Okay, so there are two scenarios. The first is the project has gone bad and I've been part of the team to go in and fix the project and to turn things around. The second part is where a system has gone live and it's not working properly. So in both cases, it costs a lot more to go and fix something than it does for the initial project. In the first case, it usually costs twice as much because you have to spend a lot of time finding out what went wrong, where the failures were, and it's always process related, and it's 99% of the time based upon a failure to define clear and accurate user requirements, and then to be able to build your project and your costing out of user requirements. The second situation actually costs 3 times more than the original project, because the first step is to do an audit to find out not only operational, or not only from the technology perspective what is broken, but also from a regulatory and from a compliance perspective. So the operational procedures themselves are examined. And that is a big chunk of money, just the analysis phase to go and do the remediation. Then you have to rebuild the system, and then you have to redeploy the system. So rebuild is usually a bit more expensive than the original project, but then you have the whole deployment cost because you have to be able to replace the existing system with the new system. And it better work, because now there are finance people, auditors, compliancy people, all watching and examining your results. So a remediation project costs 3 times as much. Now, why do I say this? Well, what we were doing was lightweight, lean, agile methodology. I know why most of the projects that have been presented are going to fail. They're going to fail because there is no relationship between the customer, the voice of the customer, and I'm going to use voice of the customer because one of the terminologies that was being used, which one was it? Oh yeah, it was value proposition, customer relationship and other segment, customer segment and so on. Those pieces around the customer, well, I know exactly where they came from. They were all part of my Six Sigma training, and we called that voice of the customer. And this is the starting point to develop requirements. Now, we can go into an agile mode, but we need to know what we're doing. And we need a detail level that sits below the value proposition and, the customer need. So that whole conversation from the old days that I called, the voice of the customer, we spent a lot of time planning and a lot of time discussing, what the real issues were, what the problems were, and so on. Now that, that helps us to develop requirements, and when we start to build up requirements, we can start to build up, different swim lanes, and then we can go proper agile. But I guarantee that most of the projects will fail because they're not going through the requirements development process as the next step into any of their deliverables. And it's really difficult for me to argue my case because some of the other candidates here just don't have any real professional, and I emphasize professional, project management training. And got into some heavy discussion that was explaining I'm wrong and they're right. But you see, when I work on a project to go and fix something that other people developed because they didn't do their job properly, then I beg to differ. So that's a hard feedback for you. Again, learning points, and learning how to do lean startup. I thought Nadine is brilliant. I would love to spend more time with her and really focus on the work outside of my project, but as a consultant, it would be impossible for me to pay for her, to pay her consulting fees. I thought the piece around IP was really, really interesting. It is an area that I think about, but I have no understanding of. And it really helped me to clarify where I'm going to go with my firm when I get it going. It helps me to establish the long-term vision. And that's important, the long-term vision for me is, where I'm going to be in 5 years' time and what I want to be selling in 5 years' time. Everything in between now and then are just steps to develop my firm and ultimately the product that I want to sell. What else really sticks in my mind? Going over to Sion and to get feedback from the people from the nursing college in Sion, they understood what I'm doing, and they saw the benefits in the healthcare environment. In fact, really, they understood the tech, they understood the application of the tech, and they understood the benefits. Why is that more relevant than the other feedback sessions that I have? Because they are healthcare professionals. They are in the healthcare business. They do they work on similar problems and have similar perspectives. And what this told me was, in fact, when I'm dealing with people, investors who are in the healthcare sector, then they will understand more clearly what I am doing. The people who are not in the healthcare sector won't see the point, and they won't see the revenue streams, they won't see the markets and how the markets are segmented and how you overlay a segment and a vertical to come up with your positioning. Oh, that's a point that I think was missing from the course actually. Product positioning. How are you going to position your product? That's an important step. I know we talk about segments, but positioning is important. It's the intersection. It's the intersection of the vertical and the segment. That's where your initial positioning is going to be, and then it should help a person to develop their strategy to expand. To look at parallel verticals, left and right, and how they are going to expand in segments north and south. That's an important learning point. Let's see, general stuff. I mean, I love Martini. I love the mountains. I mean, I could easily come down here, for a month just to think and do some work, get away from Basel. I find it, it's a very, very beautiful place. I'm so impressed with the mountains and how they, I'm able to just look. Just by looking out the window and watching the light change and so on, it helps to clear the mind and to become mindful for even for just a few minutes. And it really is an important part of the the thinking process. The city is lovely. People have been very understanding and very patient with me and my terrible French. But at least I have sufficient to be able to get around and to communicate my needs and so on. And people are very understanding. They know French is not my first language. It's not even my second language. My German is so much more advanced. But I don't really have much opportunity to use French. But it was great. I found everybody to be helpful and understanding and patient. I mean, you guys at the EDAP have been understanding and patient with me. That I'm going through a learning process, and it's an intensive one. And I think you gave me enough space to be able to experiment and to make mistakes. I would, again, I'd like to have spoken or had more time to speak with some of the researchers. There could have been some very interesting conversations there. What else? That's about it, I think. I mean, the important point that I would like you to take away is that I have been able to build my confidence and it means a lot to me. It really does. If we have time to talk about my personal situation, my history from, the past few years, you will know that not only am I challenged by the normal activity for, starting up and everything else, but I'm using this to overcome personal challenges as well. And this has helped so much. So for that, thank you very much. It's very emotional, very emotional. Okay, so I'm going to sign off. I think I need to get some coffee and wake up some more. But I hope you find this informative, and I hope the feedback is useful. So thank you very much. Bye-bye.